Hello and welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Sam and I'm excited to share my knowledge and experience in Java backend development with you. On this channel, you will expect to find content about Java, Spring Boot, DevOps, and AWS. Whether you are a beginner wanting to learn about Java development or an experienced developer looking to improve your skills, I have something for you. And in this series on Spring security, we will start with a Spring authorization server and move on to exploring real-world examples of the latest technologies in a backend development. Don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you'll never miss any new videos. So recently, Spring authorization server has released to 1.0.0 and we are going to use this version to learn today's topic. The agenda we have today is we'll see what Spring Authorization Server is and what is supported feature with this version of Spring Authorization Server, as well as we'll see one of the authorization grant types for today's video, which is a client credential authorization grant type in the demo. So what Spring Authorization Server is nothing but an implementation of multiple specifications which are like OAuth and OpenID Connect and other related specifications as well, which is built on top of the Spring security to provide a secure, a lightweight, and a customizable foundation for building OpenID Connect, the identity providers, and OAuth authorization server products. So what that allows you is your application can be integrated with Google, Facebook, Microsoft, GitHub, Twitter, and it will also allow you or enables you for a single sign-on as well. The Spring Authorization Server also provides you a fine-grained access control through the use of scopes and roles, which will define different scopes for different parts of your application or your resources and assign them to different users or user groups or services or machines in a microservice architecture where you want to give access for multiple microservices to access different resources. The supported feature for Spring Authorization version 1.0.0 is there are three grant types that are supported, which are the client credentials, the authorization code, and the refresh token. We'll see today on the grant credentials. Next other videos we'll see authorization code and refresh tokens. There are two token formats supported, the opaque and self-contained JWT. Clients can be authenticated using the client secret basic, client secret post, client secret JWT, or private key JWT. You have none for public clients. So what are grant types? The client credential grant, authorization code grant, and the refresh token grant are the three supported grant types here. We'll see today what client credential grant type is. It is a grant type that allows you, the client application, to request an access token by authenticating itself without the need for a username and password. It is typically used for server-to-server communication or a machine-to-machine communications, which we'll see today on our demo where we set up our authorization server to have a Swagger client for one of our resource server, and then we'll use the Swagger client to use the client credentials to get access for the resources in the user management service that we'll probably build as well. The second grant types supported is authorization code grant type. This is the most commonly used grant type and is suitable for server-side web applications. In this grant type, the client application redirects the user to the authorization server, where the user authenticates and grants permission to the server, the client application, and the authorization server then redirects the user back to the client application with authorization code, which the client can use to request access token using the the code that just got from the authorization code. The third one is a refresh token grant. This is nothing but the access token might expire at some point, but you can use the refresh token to exchange for an access token so that you can continue using the service without asking the user to log in again. Each grant types have its own advantage and disadvantage, and you should choose one that best fits your use case. You can find more information about grant types and how you can use them in a Spring Authorization Server in the Spring security documentation. I'll link the in the description below. So what exactly is a client credential grant types? It is the most straightforward grant type flow that you can imagine. That is because there is no any user interaction in here. The client ID and client secret will be used as the authentication, and it will authenticate itself and go and request the access token from the authorization server using the client ID and client secret. The only thing required for request param for to get the access token is a grant type, and it should be the client credential. You can also send the required the scopes that you want from the access token. That's an optional, but you can always set up on that one as well. The authentication can be sent either as another additional request parameter for client ID and client secret, or you can send it as a HTTP basic auth header. We'll see both of them. How it works is simple. The client will request the authorization server with the client ID and client secret that it has with either passing the authorization header, encoding the base64 authorization header created from the client ID and secret, or sending us a request param for the client ID and client secret with grant type client credential. If the client is configured in authorization server, we send back the access token, which will allow the client to request resource server, any resource that are allowed to for this client ID or client. The resource server will provide the protected resources for this client. For our demo of the client credential flow, we'll start by creating authorization server, and we'll configure it for one client at this time, which would be the Swagger client, and we will have another resource server, the users management service. That will be a service or a resource server that will provide user related information, at least for now. And the Swagger client will be a client for this user management service, and it would provide the proper authorization token in order to interact with this user's API. So to start with, we'll configure the Spring Authorization Server. For this Spring Authorization Server, what you need to do initially is just you need to add all the required dependencies for your authorization server. That would be Spring Authorization Auth Authorization Server. At the time of this recording, the latest version is version 1.0.0. Spring Security, most of the configuration for this class is stated in the getting started part of the Spring Security or Spring Authorization Server documentation. I'll link that in the description as well. So to start with, you need to annotate your class as a configuration, and then you will start adding the first bin with higher precedence would be the security filter chain, and this is for the protocol pointers, and you got to add another filter chain again. This will be for the login to to form login handles the redirect to the login page from the authorization server filter chain. And as you can see, this is a second order in the precedence. The third bin that we have is registered client repository. This is an example demo here. That's where we just create the client is in here on memory, but when you think of creating a client for your multiple microservices, it has to have its own repository somewhere else or data store, and might have some additional metadata as well. It depends on the client is on the number of clients that you have. You may create some small UIs to register the clients and configure the scopes and etc. So we'll need to sign this token, so we need the JWK source and the JWT decoder as well. For more on this one, you could see in the Spring authorization documentations. Also add the course configuration for this. Alright, basically this is all what you need to set up the Spring authorization server to handle the client credential flow. The configuration that's required for the client credential is actually setting up this grant type is this client authorization grant type is a client credential. You said this one, and the client can send the client ID secret, either the client secret post or the client secret basic authorization in the authorization header. So we can make a quick check here for the authorization server. I have this postpan configured to get the client credentials. I'm just passing the client ID and client secret here with the basic auth header. Yeah, so this is the access token that you'll get. You can verify that by so this is a Swagger client, this payload data for this token. You can customize this payload accordingly. That would be another video in the future that we are going to do when we enhance this authorization server to handle a real world example that we will create in this series. All right. Once we have set up the authorization server, the next step is to set up the user management service. So this user management service is nothing but just we consider it here as a resource server, and we have a user's model, basic user information in here. I'm exposing these APIs about this user resource. We can update the users, we can get the users list, and we can add a new user, as well as we could add a user, and actually this one is remove user. I would remove user using the user ID. And the basic configuration for this resource server is as follows. I have some whitelists from this security filter chain, so that I don't have to authenticate to get the initial Swagger page. Most of them are Swagger related. Once I have that, what I do here is, I'll set up this anti-matcher to whitelist this, I'll just basically permit all this whitelist anti-matchers. Then we have configured like 3 APIs with 3 different authorities. The first one is Swagger read will read or get any APIs that have a method get needs to have Swagger read, and in order to host anything with API and any API that starts with this API, it has to have the Swagger write scope, and in order to delete you need to have this Swagger delete. So this is where you configure one way to configure your client's scope or roles to do what for each HTTP method, or if you can just have another anti-matcher for to finding the APIs, you can do as well. But this is an example where you can fine-grain the request by the request method and make sure that has an authority to do that action. Here I have set up the Open API configuration as well. This is where I configure the Swagger page. I might create a new video on this one, but for now I set up the security type or security scheme to be auth2 for this flow. I have set up the token URL here and the scopes. I intentionally removed the delete scope here. So with that, I have this information as well. So this is where you can configure your OpenAPI documentation to have the security scope of auth. It could be like different. For now, what we want to see is the auth flow. Yeah, this client ID and client secret values would be added for the form for you. You don't have to set that one. If you set the client ID and secret in here. So basically, this is how we are configuring the the resource server to communicate with the authorization server. Okay, as you can see, at this point we don't have any, like we can try to get the users. The authorization is not yet happening. We can try this one and try to hit this. We'll get the unauthorized access. But if we can log in here with the Swagger client, and this is a token URL where we have the flow is a client credential flow. Let's just choose both the scopes now. So this one successfully authenticate authorize our client from authorization server, and I will get back the token here. So this is the token we have. Yeah, so with this token, let's see, and it looks like yeah, this is the scope that we did request, and we have the expired time. So now we can hit execute. As you can see, we can get the response back. And this time, as you can see, the authorization, the barrier token is added to the request. And as the user has a proper scope for this resource with HTTP method get, the resource can be provided to this client. We could also update the user. Now let's add any user, and to add any user, let's make this guy or execute. Yeah, we have this new user. The reason that we can add this one is because we allow both post and get users scope should be scoped with the Swagger write and Swagger read scopes. So the action was done successfully. So let's try the delete part. Notice the delete part, we don't have any source configuration. We do not add these HTTP methods to be processed with this Swagger client. We're expecting this one to be F403 as this operation is not provided. So you can see this is inside. This is the basic configuration of using the client credential flow using Spring Authorization Server. To recap all this, what we have here is we did configure Spring Authorization Server with one client in here. This is the Swagger client, and the idea is we need to secure all the resources that the user management service expose us through the its APIs, and as by default the Swagger will populate all those APIs in the UI. We have to make sure that whoever is using the Swagger has the enough scope or enough authority to make any change in that API. That's all what I have today for this client credential flow. On the next video we'll enhance some of the functionality in here with the client credential flow, and we'll see other grant types.